Okay, we're going to get started. Welcome to the Board of Selectmen deliberative session and vote. Today's Monday, March 3rd, 2025. We are not in Independence Hall. We are at the Fire Training Center. Okay, we made the change in order to accommodate. Welcome to the Board of Selectmen. Thought would be a significant number of people wanting to participate, and I'm glad that we did. So we're going to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Flag is over there. Mr. Testani, can you lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just thank you everyone for coming today. We don't take public comment at this meeting, but we've received hundreds of emails which we've read, and so thank you for that. For everyone online, for everyone who watches this later, thank you for your public comment through email, and it's very, very important for the democratic process. So the first order of business is item number 4, budget deliberative session and vote. Consider and act upon revenues and expenditures in the amount of $12,036,008 for the Water Pollution Control Authority for the fiscal year July 21, 2025 through June 30th, 2026. May I have a motion? Okay, any comment? Any questions?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry. What page is this on, the WPCA revenue?
WPCA revenue is.
It's on page 203. Under self-supported.
Is Michelle here? Del Gore, are you online?
Where she is, we can get her if necessary, but what's the question?
What is the question? Go ahead, Brenda.
So, I apologize. Is this to act on the WPCA budget, just the revenues, correct?
Revenue and expenditures, the item number 1 on the agenda. You want me to read it again?
No, I can see
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
And is this consistent with what we reviewed at the budget meetings last week?
I believe so. Yeah.
Unchanged.
Unchanged.
And you're technically voting on the revenue and expenditures, which net out.
Yeah, they net because it's an enterprise.
Correct, just but the department, staff and the revenue staff.
That's all.
Everything presented.
And that's taking into consideration the money we're receiving from them, staff, the person in the special projects department.
Yes, that person was an employee of WPCA in the past. That person now sits in town hall. It's an engineer that sits in town hall as opposed to purely 100%, sitting in an office across the street here. And that person, her name's Beata, does engineering work for WPCA and is charged back for her time and expense.
That's on the expenditure side, not the revenue, and it's we do that with other services as well, finance, HR, IT. That's a weighted percentage. It goes back to the enterprise fund. It's been that.
Did you hear Mr. Becker?
I could.
So for the public's benefit, in the past, there was a chargeback to WPCA, which, you know, they collect revenues from their the people who have used the sewer system. They have connection fees and usage fees. And the town has always provided support for the WPCA, accounting, human resources, multiple areas. There's a chargeback to WPCA. The engineer was not part of the engineering group in the past. They actually sat at the PCF, the facility across the street, sort of in a silo, and was charged 100% directly to the WPCA. And what we've done is move that person down to town hall to be part of the capital projects management group, and then charging their time back to WPCA. Any questions, Brenda?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Any questions, Christine? Okay, so ready to vote? Okay, we are voting on the revenue and expenditures, which are the same amount of 12,036,008 for the Water Pollution Control Authority for the fiscal year of July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2026. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Ms. Kupchak has abstained. Item number 5, budget deliberative session and vote. Consider an act upon revenues and expenditures in the amount of $467,330 for the Fairfield Regional Fire Training. For the Fairfield Regional Fire Training School for the fiscal year of July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2026. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Any discussion or questions?
So, I mean, I just have some deference here. Last week we spent a lot of time going through the budget, and there were a lot more questions than answers. And the formatting, the way things are moved, different positions without org charts.
For the fire training school?
Yes, there's new staffing positions in there. There's movement even with all of it. And the reporting structure, all of this, it was hard to comprehend or get a grasp actually on where we made changes to our budget, how much things are costing. And all of it really was really a difficult, was difficult. So this one is also difficult because there were some questions, not that it's not supporting it, but there's staffing changes that weren't clearly explained during the budget process. So I'm going to have to abstain on this vote.
Do you have any specific questions you would like to ask on this? We're in the fire training center. Maybe if there's.
I helped get money to fund this fire training school when I was
I know. So if there are any questions you would like to ask, we can try to get them answered, or would you just?
I did ask them during the budget process and they weren't really answered in the reporting structure. I mean, a lot of it's hard to follow along.
Okay, well, in your position, you can certainly follow up at any time. So I guess we're ready to move to a vote.
Yeah.
Okay, so for the fire training center, on the revenue expenditures in the amount of $467,330. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Okay.
For the record, Ms. Jacobs. Okay, next, item number 6, to consider an act upon the proposed revenues and appropriations in the amount of $4,152,844 for the Fairfield County Regional Dispatch Center for the fiscal year of July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2026. May I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Okay, any comments, questions?
Again, I'm very supportive of this, but I feel like there's just hasn't been enough information provided during these budget meetings. For me to make a vote one way or the other on this.
And again, if you, in your position, you can always follow up with your questions after this. Any questions or comments? Back to the board for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Okay.
The subject abstains. And the item passes. Okay, moving along. Item number 7, budget deliberative session and vote. And again, there's no public comment during the deliberative session and vote. This requires Board of Finance and RTM approval to consider and act upon proposed revenues and appropriations in the amount of $380,869,072 for the general fund for the fiscal year of July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2026. May I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Okay, any comments, questions? Yes, Ms. Vitale.
I'd like to make an amendment to increase the education budget by $2 million.
I will second that. Any comments?
Yes. This shouldn't come as a surprise. I shared with the public at the last meeting that I was looking to increase funding for this line item. Right now, and I'm using rough numbers, there is a $4.9 million reduction in the first selectmen's budget as compared to the budget passed by the Board of Education. Tomorrow, the Board of Selectmen will be voting on capital projects, which will include maintenance projects that are currently in the Board of Education budget, will be moving to bonding. These projects were on the waterfall for a long period of time and moved to the operating budget under the prior administration to react and to that approach to capital planning. The new administration has a different approach to capital planning. So I think it's appropriate to move these maintenance projects, which are long. They're not, fixing a door handle. These are investments in our buildings, long-term investments. So I think it's appropriate to move them back to bonding. We'll be voting tomorrow. I appreciate the Board of Education not wanting to take action when they had the budget before them, but spoiler alert, I will be voting to approve these projects. So I'm going in my mind, just talking through my thinking here. That brings the reduction down to 3.9, the restoration of $2 million. That brings the reduction for the Board of Ed to $1.9 million, which I do appreciate is still a significant amount of money that the Board of Ed and the superintendent is going to have some work to do working with school administrators and staff. But this is, and you've heard it, been tuning into the budget deliberations. It's a challenging year townwide in terms of grand lists really not seeing the increases that we would have hoped. Downside budget expense side is down. Departments across the town are taking a reduction. I thank them for the hard work that everybody has done to try to come in with a tight budget. I don't want to minimize it at all. In terms of the $1.9 million, there's still some movement that happens. Unlike the town, the school district is driven by the needs of children. How many children we have in the building. That can go up in a year and it could totally, put your budget one way, and sometimes depending on staff attrition, changes in enrollment, retirements, it could go down. So there's still some movement there. I don't want to minimize it at all. I know the Board of Education was also in the midst of some discussions at their table in terms of a technology policy, long-term capital outlay for technology. There was discussions about transportation, which I think were good ones. When I was on the Board of Education and we were facing some tight budget years, we definitely looked at changing the walking distance to comply with the state guidelines and whether or not that would provide a savings. I think that we definitely need to look at the high school buses in the afternoon to see if there can be some movement there, just because so many of our high school students are driving or staying for after-school activities. And I think that if there can be a cost savings in moving children, that would free up more dollars to put towards educating children. I absolutely support the investment in our school staff, and I think that it would be, on a personal level, just not true to myself to not put funding in there to cover the contractual obligations that I myself voted for. I also very much appreciated the discussions about looking for shared services. I think that we got a little bit of aggressive in the timeline for that and what departments might be affected. But when it comes to maintenance of plant, I think that there are opportunities there. And I say that just from having been on the board chair and having discussions during the pandemics, which were tight budget years, met with Ms. Kupchik, and I think one year we needed to add a mechanic, and the money just wasn't there. And she kind of looked at staffing at DPW, thinking that maybe DPW can support some of those needs, similar with HVAC. And we found some cost savings, just having a conversation. So I think that if we really, the town administration, school administration is committed to try to doing that work, I kind of think that we will find something sooner rather than later, especially for not things that are directly impacting the classroom in terms of educational policy. Myself, I've been kind of, bugging the first selectman to give me something to do. I miss, went to the charter revision, like I think there should be 5 people on the board of selectmen because I, would like to be more supportive. And I think a role that I can play this is supporting these conversations on shared services with the Board of Education moving forward. So putting myself out there, just to be working with the superintendent, the Board of Education, the Facilities Committee, the Finance Committee, whoever will be taking this work on. There was some mention of a road trip about going up to some districts and towns that have shared services. So totally on board for that. And that is where I am.
I support this motion. And I just want to thank everyone again for their emails. And I would say by and large, most of them were extremely civil and heartfelt. I know exactly where people are coming from. However, I do have to say this was an uncomfortable and still is, even with what would end up being a $1.9 million ask to find a cut. Still uncomfortable with that. I've never supported any cut to the Board of Education in all of my years in Fairfield as an RTM member, and always supported the budget. However, this was an amazingly difficult year. This was, I think, probably the biggest ask for an increase in town history, and will have, or would have, and now hopefully will have less, but impact on people who are struggling in this town. And not everyone has kids in the school system. A lot of people are on the verge of having, being food insecure. So I did not feel comfortable with this ask, and I would for the 3.95 million cut. You got a lot of emails calling it 4.95 billion. I don't think people were aware that we had moved over 900,000 already. Had multiple discussions with the Board of Ed. It just hadn't actually happened yet at the board level, but there was support from what we could gauge to move 950,000 into back onto the capital project plan where it originally was, but had been moved out, like you said, had been moved off because of bonding constraints impact, that were put in place in the prior administration, put into the operating budget. We are moving it back to, we are going to advocate for moving that back to bonding, and I don't believe there's any impediment to that at all. So even starting with the $3.9 million cut, still very uncomfortable with that number. Again, in my years here, I've never seen an ask for this large of an increase. and really concerned about people that are, again, insecure in their rent and their and food and housing here. But the day that I heard about this, I believe it was early January, Superintendent Testani was in my office to sign the Vision Zero pledge. I believe it was for that reason he was in my office. I asked him to come into my office and ask for a preview of what he thought the budget increase would be for the Board of Education. He said, yeah, we're looking at a 6.45% increase. And I was really concerned. So from that day in early January, maybe even late December, early January, most likely, kind of brought my administration together and told them we've got a problem and we've got to start looking for revenue opportunities and expense cuts. And we went to work doing some fairly extraordinary things, which I'm sure we're going to get into later, but found some very large revenue opportunities and that could possibly, that we expect to use to offset the Board of Education increase in the total budget. So I feel comfortable with this add back because we have actually found opportunities to offset that in the budget. What I I've seen in many of the emails I've received are, telling me, don't cut STEAM, please don't cut world languages. All of the things that are important to me, please don't cut them. And just want to remind people that what I have an ability to influence is the total budget. I have no influence over what the Board of Ed does with a cut, whether they decide to cut STEAM or world languages or art, or actually look at administration. I don't have control over that. I raised early January with the Board of Ed, and I would just want to thank the chairman, Jeff Peterson, met with him multiple times, and he brought his, the Board of the FPS team into the office, and we met. I laid everything on the table. I said, I'm willing to look at shared services and we should do that like ASAP. Haven't made progress on that yet, but I'm pretty confident now that we've talked about it enough and it's public, and I think there's an expectation that we're going to turn over every potential opportunity to find savings on that front. But on the administrative side, whether or not, we're appropriately staffed from the administration standpoint in terms of whether or not a service that is in every elementary school should be shared and things like that, that's not really within my purview. But there are some things that I hope the Board of Ed would be willing to look into because, at this point, whether or not STEAM or art or world languages is cut, that's beyond my control at this point. And I think we need to look for leadership on that front from the Board of Ed, and hopefully they can do this remaining piece of the cut in a way that does not impact the students. That's my hope. Yes. Oh, yeah.
I have a comment, but if you.
Thank you. Just a quick one. Bill, you just said you found areas in the budget that can offset it. Can you share those with us?
We're gonna have to go into executive session after this to tell you that, because some of this is things that I can't announce yet. So we'll go into executive session to discuss that. But if
Did we do that before we vote? Because obviously that's important data for Christy and I to have before we take a vote.
No, I don't think that it will work. But if you're willing to put this money back, we can vote on that, and then we can vote on another line item that will offset, and we can go in prior to that vote.
Okay.
Yeah. But I wanted, I think for us to go into executive session may be a little tricky with so many people in the room, and everyone's going to have to file out. Yeah.
Well, could we leave the room?
We could leave the room.
We can
There's a
leave.
room. I think we're okay with leaving.
Yeah, we can go to another room,
We
I
can
guess.
just go to a smaller room.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
And just through Superintendent and Ms. Laborious, I brought it up at the last meeting in terms of the current fiscal year. I'm looking at the budget, where we are right now, next year, and really impacts of what the Board of Ed decides to do. I want to try to avoid kicking the can. And I know that very often some of the numbers reported for the quarterly that I'll let you just give a quick view of where we come up to the table, just where we are at Q2. There might be some movement in terms of additional revenue coming from the state, and I just want to have initial thoughts of where we are.
Sure. So in terms of Q2, we were in a slight deficit of over $400,000, mainly because of substitute projections for the school year. We budgeted $1.1 million for sub-services and as of 2/18/25, we have spent 900 of that. So we're anticipating a deficit there. We did increase that number for next year's budget. It's in the budget book by $400,000. We're just seeing a lot more people on long-term leaves, which is driving up our substitute costs. So I think any anticipated increase of ECS funding, as we're hearing, from anywhere from $400,000 to $450,000 is going to be much needed, possibly to close that gap. It's too early to predict. We don't have numbers for Q3. We'll have a better understanding there of the overall year. But that being said, I wouldn't bank on that being surplus money right now.
And I absolutely appreciate, and hopefully that money will come. Was it ECS or excess cost?
Excess cost.
Excess cost, which will come directly to the school district rather than to town. I would just, in years past, very often, getting down to the exact dollar at the end of the year, you think that things are going to go a certain way, and then there's savings going to in utilities that you don't necessarily know until it's closer to the end of the year. Transportation sometimes ends up coming at a different number. Salt, just that type of stuff. So I would just ask that, depending how this budget plays out, there's still a lot left. That if you find yourself with spend down funds at the end of the year, and they're mentioned a couple times, in the budget book, that you're anticipating having some, not an amount, that given through recent legislation in terms of a non-lapsing account, that the Board of Ed now has an opportunity to set it up on its own. In the past, it needed to go through the Board of Finance. When your board chair had a lot of conversations about that account. I understand the concerns about it. You don't want it necessarily to budget to have a surplus. But in instances like this, where you might be facing some headwinds for next year, and if you find yourself with some surplus at the end, I would just encourage you and the board to have that conversation in the coming months to see if you could carry anything over to kind of anticipate maintenance. The healthcare number, I think that there was a change in the census, so there's actually additional money in that line item this year than what was originally budgeted for. Is that correct? Do I remember correctly from the quarterly? I don't know.
Small amount, yes. So can I say anything? Okay, so I appreciate you making the motion to restore $2 million from the $3.9 million cut. I do want to also frame that overall, that is still a $4 million cut to the budget, because we did make preemptive cuts of $2.1 million. So I want to be clear that we're not cutting the budget $1.9 million, we're cutting the budget $4 million, because we've already made those cuts. In these additional cuts, as was stated by the first selectman, that will be a decision that will come down to myself and the Board of Education in terms of what those cuts will look like. Part of those cuts already were staffing, FTE. So we already taken some meat off that bone. So there will be job reductions as a result of another 1.9 million as you start to mull that over in deliberations. And I also need to clarify something that's been presented twice in the last week. And people seem to think that there was an increase in FTE from the budget, and that somehow we miraculously came in on budget at the end of the year. So there's some fat there that we can trim. We did increase, as I mentioned last week on Wednesday, 8 FTE, a teacher and 7 paras for a new CLC classroom at Jennings School, which does have cost avoidance savings there. We did add 8 positions in the last 2 years due to increased enrollment at the elementary school. Section opens per Board of Ed policy. So we also moved 13.25. I've said that, and no one seems to want to hear that. 13.25 positions were shifted from grants to operating, which, as you know, will avoid a fiscal cliff. That's why we haven't had to come back if grants are reduced to the town for any additional money in the last 2 years. And we also moved three speech language pathologists from contracted services to operating budget. So there isn't all this head FTE additions that have been made. We've negotiated every single contract in the last 18 months, every collective bargaining unit. We've gotten not an $800,000 increase to health insurance. That was just the increase that we didn't anticipate based on what the state said, but $3.1 million in healthcare increase this year. We've got unfunded mandates from the state increasing the age that students are allowed to stay in our school district that affects us over $600,000 a year. We've been reduced in 2 years in excess cost, to your point, 1.3 million. So gratefully, if they give us $400,000 back, it doesn't even cover 40% of what they've taken from us. So I think we need to understand that. And I'm here doing my duty as superintendent. My responsibility is to advocate for this budget, for our students, for our staff, for our families. And I want that to be clear. So when you deliberate, take all these things into consideration, please. You vote, I don't vote. Board of Ed cast their votes. They voted in favor of this budget. I don't have a vote. I wish I did. It'll be up to the three of you, but it's your vote. Remember that. It is Christine Vitale's vote, Bill Gerber's votes, Brenda Kupchik's vote, not mine. So again, you own that vote. As long as you're okay with it, I will respect your vote and I will do the work that needs to be done to come in within budget for next year. But I just want to be clear with them. I'm not here to be adversarial. I'm just here to be an advocate, to do my due diligence, to be a responsible superintendent of schools. I don't think that's being appreciated. I think that's also being, there's a villainized approach to that. And that's why we have so many people here. That's why you got so many emails. Because I asked them to do that. Because a lot of people weren't paying attention. And they told me that in their response to me. I wasn't, had no idea. People don't watch meetings. Unfortunately, they're busy with their lives, trying to pay bills, as the first selectman said, trying to pay their rent, trying to eat. So we had to raise that awareness. So I just want that to be clear. 2 million is a great gesture. I think we can do a little bit more, and I would hope we could.
Yeah, I just would like to say that I've had no issue with the superintendent's email going out to the public. And I certainly had no issue with the emails that we received back. If you recall, a past superintendent doing something similar and really being vilified, but I don't believe that anyone was vilified for that this time around. Mike Cummings did the same thing and was vilified. So I try not to be a hypocrite whenever I can avoid it or when I'm aware of it. Try not to be it. And in this case, was not really taken aback by that. I also really appreciated the amount of engagement from parents and also some students. I believe that you're right, Mr. Testani, when people are not aware, most people are never aware. And it takes sometimes, a last minute, last ditch effort to sort of make people aware of what is going to happen to get them to pay attention. And when they do, then you start to see the numbers. And this is no different from most years that I recall being on the RTM or my wife being on the Board of Ed, the frustration of trying to get people to pay attention. And then when they do, you really, with the public, you can't really say, where were you over the last, 6 months? Because we know where you were. You were taking your kids to dance class and art class and baseball and all that stuff. We know that people don't have the capacity to pay attention like we do throughout the year, and that it takes, it takes a lot to get people to pay attention. So I don't know, vilifying on advocating. No, I don't think that's the right word. I think there has to be an understanding, though, that vilifying is the wrong word, but I feel that there is also not an understanding amongst the public that what gets cut is not up to this board, and that there are areas to cut and to save money that, people are entrusting in the superintendent's office to find the areas that don't affect the teachers. And I know past superintendents were accused of raising alarm bells about cutting programs when there were other areas that actually, like in the administration, that could be cut, or things that did not touch the students. And that is not within my control. And sometimes, people don't understand, and they have to really trust that whether or not there's 3 layers of curriculum review or 2, and one layer may not be the most, like in a crisis situation, one layer or part of one layer of curriculum review that's not in the classroom, maybe in a year where you are possibly going to put people into food insecurity and home insecurity, like maybe that's where you look first. I don't think the public has any way of really understanding that those opportunities are there, and the choices that are made on that front, while difficult, those are the difficult choices that do need to be made in a crisis. And this, quite frankly, is a crisis. We have inflation that we haven't seen in decades. We had, and I've always said I agree with the catch up on wages. Our teachers were too underpaid, like it had gone too far. And Mr. Testani did a great job explaining this to the board years ago when he first got here, that, hey, you need to be prepared for a 12-13% increase in teacher salaries. And I really applauded that, because to see some members of the Board of Finance actually listen to that and not fight that was an accomplishment. I think the way that was described and that went through, and that was right. However, when it comes down to this year's, I used to get annoyed as an RTM member and as a parent when leaders would say, "We're not cutting your budget, we're cutting the increase in your budget." You asked, and while that's true, that doesn't make people feel better. However, I think people need to understand that there's so many layers to the onion here. You may look at a cut to a $15 million ask increase, and even a $5 million cut to that would make it a $10 million increase, which is an enormous increase. But you don't want to hear that that's not a cut, it's a cut to an increase. Nobody wants to hear that if your kid's in the school system. I never did either. However, you have to also understand that you don't really know whether a $2 million cut really has to be to STEAM or world languages or art or all the things that we cherish, and whether they couldn't be to some layer of administration that could be cut, because you trust the people to tell you that, and if they say, well, no, we don't want to do that. It's not that we can't do it. It's we don't want to. And so we're going to hopefully the Board of Ed is going to look really hard at that when they look at this $1.9 million cut, and not try to impact the class, or try to avoid impacting the classroom and finding other ways that they may be uncomfortable, but they for the good of the town, are going to have to find those things. Yeah. Yes.
I just want a point of clarification. I very much appreciate the Board of Ed has already made reductions to the budget. But I think it's also important to note that they made reductions to basically offset an increase that came in after the superintendent presented his budget. I don't envy the position they were in at all, but that was somewhat of an offset. Look, believe me, I'm trying to stay in my lane here and also remember this new role after being an education advocate for so long. It's difficult not just to be like, just restore it fully. But knocked on, in the last 8 years, I've run 3 townwide campaigns. I've knocked on thousands of doors, talked to thousands of residents of all spectrum of age and socioeconomic status and challenges. And affordability is definitely a concern for all of our families. Not even to the point of just, food insecurity or putting them out of their homes. Like there's definitely part of that, but just, just for families, clothes, food, planning for saving for colleges, being able to go on vacation. I think that there needs to be a balance. And I think that all town bodies, regardless of political party, try to find that balance. And while I appreciate it absolutely could be more, I think that right now, at this stage in the budget process, a $2 million addition, given that there's still some uncertainty and more information is going to come in on the Board of Ed side in terms of staffing and where some of these utility prices come in and what the state ends up doing, that's what I'm comfortable with right now. I would have done a straight ad. I'm happy to hear that the administration has found a revenue offset. But regardless of that, I support the ad. But thank you. I mean, it was, and as far as the email to the district, Mr. Testani, I thank you sending it out to parents. I attended the town hall meeting. Parents' feedback that was given to the board was that we don't know, we want to be kept in the loop. And I just took the email as basically you just telling parents what was going on so they could be involved in the process here. And as the budget moves forward to the Board of Finance and the RTM. To that point, I will stop talking, except to remind the public that there is a public, you couldn't get public comment today, but there is a public budget forum the 3rd weekend in March. Encourage you just to continue your advocacy. If not, even just as for civic engagement, to learn about our town and the budget drivers in our town and the various needs. It's interesting. I find it interesting, and who knows, some of you might get you to run for something. All right.
Selectman Coachit.
Thank you. Okay. There's a lot to unpack here. Listen, I obviously support adding back money. I do feel a little uncomfortable that we can't have an executive session before we do it. I understand why. I mean, why we can't find out where these, mysterious magical drivers came in, where we're going to be able to cover 2 mil. Listen, when I ran the town, 2 mil to find was a real difficult thing. I spent a lot of late nights in town hall with my finance people, and finding $2 million is not like finding $5 in your pocket. Listen, the reason that the percentage that the Board of Education came in on was so high wasn't a mystery to anyone. It was because we finally started paying our teachers and paras a legitimate wage. We all knew it. We all voted for it. We knew there was going to be a giant hit to the budget. We knew it, but we accepted it because we value our teachers and we value the people who educate our children every day. It's important. And, listen, we knew it, and I'm not the one who built this budget. Christine's not the one who built this budget. The budget is built by the leader of the town. And frankly, when you know that you have this amount of money coming in to support our education in the town, you need to do a different thing in your town site budget. It's a balancing act, right? 1 year, you're going to give the education a little more, and you're going to back off on your town stuff that you want. And once the education evens out, then you can start doing things in the town that you want to do to implement better services for the community, add staff. I mean, it's a hard sell, and it may not be a huge amount, but when you add, a lot of staff to the first selectman's office, more than has ever been in the history of the town. When you're creating new departments, when you're doing all these different things at the same time, knowing full well that we all supported a raise to our teachers, which we knew was going to be a significant amount of money. Any way you slice it, it's going to be a lot. It was worth it, but it's going to be a lot. You have to make concessions. It's like in your own home. You know, you got to pay your college tuition. Here comes my kid. You got to go to college. Now you and your husband sit down and you're like, okay, well, what modifications are we going to make to our household budget to accommodate this additional cost that we have to do because we love our child and want to send them to college. So it's like anything else. Listen, I don't think the 2 million is enough. And honestly, I support putting the 2 million back. I have a lot of concerns about just blindly supporting a $2 million increase without knowing what the hell is we're gonna do to cover it. So that's not really a fair thing to ask either one of us to do. Like, vote for the 2 million, and after we vote, let's go into Rome and tell us how much the 2 million, where that 2 million's coming from. I support the 2 million, but as far as the overall budget after the executive session, I don't know, because again, I'm going to say it, and it's very obvious. The Board of Ed did a lot of hard work. Christine and I both served on that board. We know, hundreds of hours of crunching numbers and looking at things, and they did the work. They cut $2 million, which again, when you're in charge of a budget, and I know what that feels like, it's really hard to do. And so now, we're talking about maybe they're going to get some grant money from the state. I'm looking at all of you right now in this room. You watch the news, right? You really think we're getting any money from the federal government or the state because they get it from the federal government? We're not getting it. As a matter of fact, we might be even losing more of what we had or what we've counted on. So you have to be realistic. All right, I know I've talked too long. Okay, so we're gonna have to go. So we're still on board about going into executive session after this.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I don't, are you finished?
Yes.
Okay, so from where I stand, it was a preview that I think we have good offsets to this, but I would also like to say that supporting the 2 million without offsets would mean increasing
Absolutely.
the mill rate
I
and
agree.
any reductions so I would believe the reason you would support it is because you would be willing to raise taxes in order to make it happen, because on the townside's like not up, like it's up just like 2%. So even if you wanted to fire everyone in my office, then it still wouldn't really be enough to make a material difference to offset this amount. So I think since you're in favor of it, and you would be willing to actually increase taxes to do it, that we're probably all in agreement, but I think we should probably go to a vote
Can I
unless.
just make one?
Yeah,
Ms. Kupchak just bring up the uncertainty at the federal level in terms of funding. And I think that, right now I'm voting on the status quo. I think that if there is a major change in just federal grants that are coming down to the school district, we need to all get around the table again at some point. I mean, realistically, and on the town side, and on the town side too.
That will be an emergency.
Like across the board, that's going to be an emergency.
That we've never seen
And
before.
well, I mean, my decision is but I'm not looking at, loss of federal funding right now. I'm looking at what we have right here. Totally agree with you that knew the teacher increase, supported it, and the parent increase, totally supported it. For me, what kind of blew it out of the water was just that 20% increase in transportation that really, and which no one really seemingly saw coming. And that's where the hit is. And I think that's where I think we need to kind of look at that $1.9 million, looking at transportation and maintenance and stuff like that first. I'm not even saying the administration side of it, but I very much hear about if we can streamline there in any way in terms of, I leave that up to the Board of Education to do. And I know that they will do that work. That's where I am. I hear you about the grants and I appreciate you bringing that up because that is still some exposure
And
for
just to
everybody.
clarify,
Yeah,
comments, Bill, you,
Ms. Cupton, yeah.
thank you. You know, no, I wouldn't vote to restore $2 million and raise taxes. You've just said we're gonna go to an executive session after this, and you're gonna tell Christine and I how we're gonna offset the 2 million so that we don't raise taxes. I'd like to hear you say you're gonna offset the entire cut. And we can come back out here and maybe make another motion to restore all the money back. But I will take a vote of faith to support the $2 million back to the Board of Ed in hopes that when we go into executive session, I'm going to hear something that sounds legitimate. And that's where I am.
Yeah, and we should move to the vote, but I do want to say that first that, you know, I do read and watch meeting minutes, and I do read, I read meeting minutes. I watch many of the meetings, and the Board of Ed's attorney from Pullman Comley usually puts together a pretty good sort of preview of contracts and of all the contracts. And if you look at those previews from the contracts that were settled in recent years, you would have expected for about 80% of school board budget that that the wage, which make up the wages, that they would have gone up by under 4.5%, something like 4.3% was the expectation for wage increases in the current year. And so it would not have been an expectation to see a 7% increase in the budget. Those were sort of extraordinary items that I don't think anyone really saw coming, and that was, or we weren't expecting something that large, and that was driven by things like transportation, sort of things on lane changes within the contract that were not expected, to get to a higher, you know, people moving from different degree lanes, and a couple of other things that were just not expected. So voting on multiple contracts that would have, you know, this year, you know, given you, I was not expecting, prior to hearing about these other items, I thought, and I expressed this to the Board of Ed, that I thought we were going to see something under 4.5%, because of what was presented to us as the current year contract increases. And there are things that just the current economy just blew that out of the water. Those 20% of the school board's expenses brought the increase from an expected 4.3 to 4.5% up to 7%. That just shows how, you know, I'm not going to do that algebra in my head, but you can figure it out. Just, you know, that increase means that the 20% that was unexpected was an enormous increase. Yes, so that is all I have to say. Any other comments? So taking it back to the board for this adjustment, all of adding back $2 million to the Board of Ed budget. We have to, should I just take the number and add in 2 million, David? Or Tom?
So
it's
Seven.
197 would be org.
So instead of 380,869,072, I still, since I say we have offsets, could we just add the 2 million to the Board of Ed
just doing the
budget?
Board of Ed, so we're adding it,
So the Board of Ed,
would go to 232,040,387,
Correct.
right,
increasing the Board of Education budget to
me to say that again?
232,040,387.
387. So that is the revised,
That is the revised allocation to education.
okay. So we are voting on a add back of $2 million to the Board of Education budget, getting it to 232,040,387. May I have a motion? I guess we've already made the motion. So, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, unanimous. Great news. Okay, so we are going to have to go into executive session. I think, we're going to invite, I'm sorry, what?
The wording would be to enter into an executive session, to discuss items related to strategy, bargaining, and to include COO.
May I read, can you pass that over? But I need to make sure we have every executive session that we need. So that will be you, and Tom, and anyone else? Okay, can I read your
Will
motion?
you read the motion on why we're going?
Yes. So can I have your computer, or do you want to send it to me? Right there. Okay, so, making a motion to enter an executive session to discuss items related to strategy and collective bargaining, and to include the Chief Operating Officer, David Becker, and the Chief Fiscal Officer, Tom Harris. May I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, why don't we find a room and we'll come back?
I think you can go to 111.
Okay. have a motion to come out of executive session. Say aye. We are out of executive session. Is the mic back on?
There's room for that.
So David, the motions.
Yeah. After the bell. I guess.
All the revenue items. And then expense
Take a
items.
break down the street.
Yeah, let's do that.
I did some.
Back on.
Those are two revenue items. You have the wording?
Right now. There. Use that one first.
Okay, the motion is, I'd like to make a motion to add 1.1 million to the drawdown of the fund for a negative $3.6 million drawdown of the org number 01001320, active employee benefits, object 52101, contribution surplus. Give me a second. Okay, any discussion on this?
I would just say, obviously, we discussed this in executive session, so I can't go into a lot of detail about it. But based on what I just heard, I think there's still, it's not something concrete or something that I'm assured is going to happen. So I'm gonna have to vote no against this because I'm gonna rely on the Board of Finance to take this piece up. Hopefully there'll be more additional information for them when it gets to them. But right now, it's an assumption, and it's not an assumption I'm willing to vote yes on.
Any comments?
No.
Okay, so we're gonna take this to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed?
No.
Okay, motion passes. Next, we have another, need some time, David, to grab this.
So I would do the collection, the reserve fund collective taxes. So let's do that one next.
Okay,
Top lines.
thank you, sir. Next, we make a motion to adjust the reserve for uncollected taxes down by $150,000 to $3,350,000. We have a motion?
Moved.
Seconded. So any discussion on this motion?
Would you like to explain this a little bit for the public's edification?
Yeah, I'm gonna actually ask David Becker to explain this. This is based on collection, expected collection rates and
In each year, we don't fully collect all the taxes. They're paid oftentimes, they're for various reasons delayed. So we don't project the full year's collection. We actually have another line for prior year's collection. So the collection rate that the town has been assuming the past few years has been 99.01%. When we did the first selectman proposed budget, we had it marked at 98.96. So this moves it back up just to the 99.01. I'd call it more of a housekeeping item. There was at this board last year an adjustment to 99.07, which was then later brought down. So I think everybody's probably a little bit cognizant on the Board of Finance, to be clear, also sets what's called the collection rate, which is this number. We are merely moving it up to where at the very end, a minor item that we probably would have done anyways within the proposal, and being cognizant not to move into what is essentially then the Board of Finance's territory if they want to go from there.
any other comments on this? Questions?
So I'm fine with this because the collection rate, we have a very high collection rate. And I agree that assume that we have that collection rate that we've had. So I'm in favor of this one.
Any comments? Okay, take it to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous, thank you. Next, that'd be the auto.
We'll do the supplemental motor vehicle first.
Okay, thank you, sir. So supplemental motor vehicle, increase the supplemental motor vehicle assumption by $1 million to $113 million. This is not the tax, this is the assessment assumption. To 113, wait, there's a mistake.
We're increasing each year as people register their vehicles throughout the year, that adjusts the is collected. So we have a reserve number that's in place for that. Latest guidance by the tax assessor is that number projection for the upcoming year would be at 113 million. Previously within the budget book, it had it at 112. So again, a minor sort of best available information, and that's based on the assessed value. So that's not actual tax, it transfers back to the mill rate.
Yeah, the mill rate times that difference of 1 million. So this is changing the assessed value of our motor vehicle assessed values. Any questions?
So just for the public's edification, the state of Connecticut, passed legislation that would use the amount of assessed value on cars. That's most Connecticut
I
residents.
think that's the next item. This is
Oh,
just a
this-
true up in
The true up on
what we had on the books.
our
Yeah,
assessed,
not the true up of the 5%. That would be the next
assessed value on,
value of under the current assessed value of motor vehicle. They were under assessed by they look at who bought cars during a period of time and they under
but it's
project.
not based on the state.
That's the next item.
Okay.
Okay. So this is just like a technical
Can you
true up.
explain this a little?
Yeah,
more
do you
detailed
wanna
to the public, please?
For this item,
Yes.
so again, throughout the year, purchase a vehicle, you will ultimately get a tax bill, but it's a partial bill, so you're not factored in, that vehicle is not factored into our actual payments. The vehicle that you have right now, if you have one, would be ended up actually, getting rid of that vehicle and going to another vehicle for the ebbs and flows of the decrease in the grand list. To be found on page 1 of our budget book. And then this is for that new vehicle that gets a partial year, so we call it a supplemental tax bill. So this is the assessment line there. So we have projections that every year, so this is the assessed line, and we're just doing an adjustment. We had placed 112 million. The assessor believes that number should be 113, translates to roughly $30,000 as far as tax, give or take, because it's 1 million against the mill rate.
Any questions? Seeing none, ready to vote? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. All right, David. Thank you. Next item.
Um,
Can I just say real quick, if anybody else decides to leave, please don't slam the door like every other person that's decided to leave. Thank you.
Yeah, just let it,
Wow.
try to close it. I didn't realize it, so it's really echoing through the.
Yeah, I mean, it's the microphones like are the
Oh.
green light thing, so it's. I mean,
Everyone here, Chelsea, if you leave, try to just close the door gently so it doesn't echo through and become part of the permanent record.
next one.
Thank you, sir. So, the next item is and this is, what you refer to increase the grand list projection by $32,407,798. And do you want to explain that, David?
So this item is, so we have a projection for what the current grand list is. It does get changed a little bit throughout the process, but the current one that's in there is through January 31st. And the grand list, as an example, it's roughly 13.8 billion. So that's all real property in the town, vehicles, there's personal property tax for businesses, there's and then obviously there's real estate is the biggest driving item. So this adjustment has to do with the portion within there that is for motor vehicles. The motor vehicles have been, in the past, there was a factor, there's usually a blue book depreciation and it has, certainly causes the value and the taxing of vehicles sort of be all over the map. We actually saw during the pandemic, people's typically are used to going down. We actually saw people where all of a sudden their bills were going back up due to a lot of the fluctuation, and particularly in the used car market. Last year in Hartford, they made a bill to adjust it and put it on essentially a sliding scale. So moving forward, you can essentially predict what your vehicle, and so can the town, be year over year, what it will depreciate at and how it will be taxed. One of the unintended consequences is it actually, in a way, it almost left like not quite an unfunded mandate. I'm not sure what the exact term might be for this one, but it did leave certainly a cliff within there because and it has affected every municipality essentially, and particularly in cities, in that it created a funding hole because we assume that we're going to get a certain amount of value, back dollars to the bottom line based on motor vehicles, and that actually one of the struggles with our grant list was we actually saw a big drop off because of the depreciation schedule was essentially in the end too aggressive. So there's already through the House and the Senate anticipated for the governor's signature adjustment that will essentially cause, when we calculated, about a 5% adjustment in our in the vehicle portion of our grant list. So this $32,407,798 translates into roughly $921,000 in bottom line revenue. And I think one point, just as we walk through this, it's more placing things back where they were versus the previous calculations were a deficit year over year.
Any, go ahead, Brenda.
In layman's terms, the state of Connecticut, the legislature passed a bill because people were screaming that, we're one of the few states that charge people a lot on their car taxes. And they listened, and then the town screamed at the governor that we need that revenue and we want it back. So essentially, this is, it's a tax in another way. So we're taxing people back to a higher rate on their cars. And I'm not in favor of this.
I would put it differently. I mean, I know there is a movement and you believe that, and you just, as you said, it is a tax and not every state has an auto tax. But I think from the way this was explained to me by the tax assessor was it's a lot of work for assessors to to match every car and the type, the year, model, make model up to the ever-changing sort of market value. I don't know if that's the Blue Book or whatever, wherever they get the market values in that given year. They wanted to move to something that would be significantly easier. It was a depreciated depreciation schedule that meant that assessors no longer had to go out and match every car with the current market value, that they could just depreciate the value of every car based on a schedule. And that there were a lot of, anyone who wants to Google this, you can see a lot of expectation that this was being done, a lot of suspicion that this was being done in order to jack up the assessed values and increase taxes for the town. What happened was the calculation, the way it was done, actually did the opposite. And a lot of towns were finding their grand lists for autos going down, and ours went down, I believe, was something like 9%, which is pretty amazing. It had a huge impact on our auto grand list, and would have had sort of like a over 900,000 impact on our taxes. What the state government decided to do was essentially correct for that, so that the taxes on autos can start with a higher percentage of the I believe the schedule initially was allowing people to go to 80% of the whatever that starting value was, to take it up to 85%, which brings that assessed value back more in line with where we were last year. So people aren't going to see a big tax benefit or relief from this. They're going to see taxes on their autos more in line with what they would have expected had this law never been passed. So whether or not there's a movement afoot in Hartford to try to provide relief on car taxes, I don't think that the way it was explained to me, this is not that. This was not part of that movement. This was really providing relief to assessors who spend a lot of time on cars, which is, it's a portion of the grand list, but a relatively small portion. Any comments or questions? So we're gonna vote on this item. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so motion passes. What's next?
We have schedule of some smaller items. These were what we discussed last week. And the schedule out to the members. Pass them down. I believe that either take them as a package.
I'd love to take them as a package if everyone's amenable here. But I'll read them. So number of adjustments, and we can break them out if people want to at the table. But the adjustments are as follow. Private school transportation, there's an adjustment to that of $2,923 increase. Active Active employee insurance, an increase of 43,097. You're going to talk through these. I forget what that one was actually. If you want to talk through these now or after I
We'll
read them
put
all.
them on the table first.
Okay. Regular payroll, an increase of 75,421. A sergeant, police sergeant pay increase of 14,497, 14,694. Social Security, $1,091. Fees and professional services, an increase of 2,188. Clothing, an increase of 4,000. Training, an increase of 3,800. The Tricentennial Museum and Town celebration, 20,000. Marina software, 20,000. Virtual EOC software, 8,000. And that is a total of 195,214. May I have a motion?
Second, questions now?
Yeah, or would you rather David just walk through each one individually or?
Well, I just want to first say, I want to ask, is this posted on the website for the public to follow along with the meeting?
We will be posting this as a part of backup. The schedule was prepared this morning to simplify what normally would have just been a bunch of individual motions one by one.
Right, I mean, just, you'll get pushback. People like to, if they're watching the meeting, it looks like we do have a lot of people watching the meeting. People here, they don't have a copy of it. So, I just think that it's more transparent to allow that, but
Yeah, I think at every board meeting, there's usually a lot of motions. This was an attempt to consolidate them, but we could take them one by one, like, we don't normally post adjustments in advance of the board meeting, but we can take them one by one, or we can take them all together, post it after the meeting. Whatever you think would be appropriate. I'm amenable to any.
it could have been posted on a power for people to look at. All right. Do you want to go through them?
Yeah, David, why don't you go through them? So, and if there are any further questions.
So the contribution, private school transportation, that's just, again, these are all minor adjustments based on available current information. So it's $2,923. Also, the health self-insurance line for $43,097. Part had ties to the police department, head count there. And we went back and double checked the overall head count, active insurance pool. And were able to come up with the 4397. So that actually included a few that we, that includes that the entire, was just a minor adjustment to the best available information. The rest of the lines moving down for about the next half dozen are just tied to, as we had said, we had originally, the administration intended, along with the police department, to have the one sergeant's position and the four patrol officer positions. There was a lot of back and forth in the last 24 hours of setting the budget. Trying to stay as lean as we could while that objective within the police department. And so lost in translation in there were some of the salary and other accounts to actually sergeant. So this is adjustments that then bring us to true that up. So there's a regular payroll increase for the police department of 75,421. The sergeant adjustment at 14,694. And then the other various lines are essentially covering outfitting, actual officer and social security. So social security at 1,091. There's a fees line of 2,188. There's a clothing line of $4,000, a training line of 3,800. We had talked during the budget that there was a lot of back and forth between the museum and the town during our discussions over the past few months of who would cover the centennial event. Declaration of Independence event. So that is $20,000. We're suggesting to put that into the miscellaneous contingency account as a one-time item. There was discussion about the marina software, which had been taken out of the capital. Right now, they do mostly paper, and looking to modernize the way that the marina is managed. So that's $20,000. And there seemed to be consensus at the meeting last week on that item as well. So we added that to this schedule. One other item that came up is virtual EOC. The half of it has been paid out of the emergency management line. Half of it has been paid out of the police department line. The police department had removed that from their side at guidance from town hall, and thought that it had been increased in the emergency management budget to cover for the other half. That actually hadn't, so we're proposing to put that in, and that just keeps it funded and gets it out of the police department's budget and more centralized, which we've done with other items. That all totals up to $195,214.
So, open up for questions.
So these are adjustments to be more accurate in the budget, and it's gonna add $195,214 to the budget.
Correct.
More money.
It does, the bulk of it is the police sergeant,
Yep. So it's 200,000.
which we've stated.
I mean, listen, it's,
That we're supportive of.
there were a lot of inaccuracies, and I'm glad it's being cleaned up. I don't have any additional questions on the items.
Okay, any questions, Christine? All right, ready for a vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, unanimous.
I asked, if
Yeah, so is
nothing-
that's it for your adjustments, right, David?
That is everything.
Okay,
So I had asked, Jennifer had emailed and asked if we would, Christina and I would like to have any additional department heads come back. And I had requested that Bill Hurley and the new project management team come back to discuss Mr. Hurley's and the conversations about the deficit in the engineering department. If we could, we have Bill Hurley come up, that would be
floor is your turn.
Thank you. Hi, Bill.
Hi. Good afternoon now, I think.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Not quite.
So during the budget process, we got a presentation on this new department, project management department, and in the budget book, my education budget. There's a page where you on again, Bill? I have my notes, but.
145.
So, I'm not trying to micromanage a reorganization effort, and there wasn't a whole lot of information about the reorg, but we have on page 152 the capital projects ops manager, who's Eli, that used to be in the engineering department, helping with engineering and project management. And we have 3 project managers at a cost of $363,954, which, if I remember correctly during the presentation, they are engineers and with project management experience. Is there any appetite from the board to make a motion or support a motion to move an engineer of those 3 back into Mr. Hurley's department, so that he's just having the staff to do his work. You know, he made it pretty clear. I have a lot of experience because I dealt with it. And as was evidenced by the long list of items that Mr. Hurley mentioned, he has to handle along with his now diminished engineering department. And even even Mr. Went from the zoning department, you know, brought to our attention, which Mr. Hurley did not during his presentation, that Bill has to review all these flow tests and all these other things for every planning and zoning application. And as we know, we get a lot of those. We're getting like applications, you know, our ears, you know, trying these big projects, and we have to, as a member of our town, supply that data to Jim Wen and Emmeline. So that when they go before the planning and zoning, they can say, yeah, that was looked at. There's not enough sewer capacity. There's not this, there's not that, whatever it is. It's a lot of work. And so, yes, project management, I think, is lovely, but at the same time, you have to take care of your basic stuff that you have to do in your town. And I do think that this is something that's really important. And I don't know if the board has an appetite for it. And I don't even know if this project management department is a real department. I don't know if it's a separate department. But I think that I heard someone who's worked for our town for over 35 years ask very clearly, and he's not one to ask. He's not really that kind of person. He asked for an engineer to be put back in his department, and I'm trying to be listening to him. And I don't know how you feel about it.
I very much, Mr. Hurley, and I hear the need to the micromanaging piece of it. I don't have enough experience. I don't have the benefit of having been first selectman, so I don't really know in terms of the day-to-day workings. I really do defer to the first selectman to share how the workflow might change with this project management group. My understanding from our discussions over the last few days was that this project management group would be available to other town departments as needed. Because I hear the concern. I would hope that there would be, that was factored into moving the creation of this group and being an asset to everybody. But I don't really have anything to add. I really would defer to the first selectman on this. In
Well-
terms of the day-to-day operations of the town. I'm not in town hall every day, so I don't really feel that I have the same sort of knowledge base
I mean,
that.
having Bill here,
Well,
you
and
know, I think maybe if we
Yeah.
could just ask him how, he shared
Yeah,
that
I
his
think you should
department.
ask, Bill.
Okay,
Okay,
so,
Bill.
yeah, Bill, I very much appreciate you being open with your needs. I think that it's important that the Board of Selectmen understands what department heads needs. And I think that we know just that a lot of department heads asked for things that did not materialize in this budget. So I want to, again, just thank everybody for the work on that. If you want to just share where you see potential challenges, I don't want to go too far down the road of like the administration addressing day-to-day operations, but the floor is yours.
Just to
The
be
floor is
clear,
yours.
what we presented was that someone that was working under Bill in his department was then moved, that money was taken and plugged into the project management department as a project manager who happens to be, I think, have an engineering. So Bill, can you?
But funding is still in the same under DPW.
Yeah, I mean,
So it's
before Bill, why don't I start by saying that really is a valued member. I mean, no doubt. I think hopefully Bill understands how valued he is. That people like, project management is something that has fallen under engineering in the past, and that Bill had project management people who primarily work on project management under him. So that it's not a net negative when you move someone like Eli Gazal, who was a project manager within the engineering department, now a project manager in a sister department, both under DPW. That's just moving people around for focus. What that does is take some of the project management responsibility out from the engineering group. Explained why we want to do that, to free up our engineers, who typically a small portion of their work is design, but they have the capability to do more design work. I think the problem that I have with the quandary of what Selectwoman Kopchik is saying is that, yes, I would love to have another headcount. And whether it's under Bill Hurley or under project management, ultimately, and Bill has said this many times, he's looking at a list of projects which now totals something like $500 million or more. Would I ask for more people for Bill and for actually both sisters in the under DPW? I would like to, but this was part of talking to the Board of Ed people, the advocates. This was one of the gives this year in order to keep taxes lower. Would I have asked for another headcount or even two in a normal year? Yes, I would, because I am afraid of not being. We want to reduce our reliance on third-party project managers who charge an arm and a leg and are not as necessarily incentivized to do the right thing for the town as someone who would work for the town. Would I be horribly upset if we voted here today to add another person to Bill Hurley's staff? I would not. So, I feel from where I stand, this is kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't, because we want to keep taxes low. I don't believe we've lost anything by moving people to a sister department to focus on project management, but I do believe Bill could use another person.
So I just want to be clear that I wasn't suggesting we add staff to the budget. I think there's been enough adds. I think that what I'm saying is if you look at the personnel summary, Bill lost Eli and he had Scott's position. It's listed on his budget. I don't know if that got filled or if that got plugged into the special projects. What I'm saying is this new department has a lot of staff, and one of the people in that department has now moved this department to lead it. And then 3 project managers / engineers have been plugged into this department. All I'm saying is we should move one of those engineers to Bill so that he can have what he needs, which he asked for, no change to the budget.
Yeah.
Just allow him to have the staff that he needs to do just the basics, which are a very long list of basics that he needs to do in his department. And I think that's what he was asking.
Yeah, that I do think is really getting into the operations side of my job. That I would not support. I have a view of all the stuff that needs to get done. And I'm very confident that with the limited resources we have, that everybody is really stretched, doing things that they have to do. Bill is stretched, and Eli's team is stretched. But if you were willing to add a person, I would definitely entertain that. I think it is somewhat micromanaging, from my standpoint, where personnel sit, because I'm in a pretty good position to know what we need, having working in town hall every day. And Bill himself would say, and has said many times, he looks at the list of capital projects, which is larger than ever, and it is a daunting list. I think Bill should have a chance to speak, because I know Bill can speak to his constraints with his current staffing in his office. David can speak to the constraints of I mean, all of these report up through to David Becker, who's Chief Operating Officer. DPW reports to David Becker, engineering is under DPW, capital projects management is under DPW. So really the best person at this point to see the big picture are basically myself and David Becker. And the picture I see, a lot of that comes from everyone who I'm involved with. I don't think really it makes sense at all. But I do think if there's appetite for a headcount add, which will cost money, but that would be money well spent. Anyone want to?
I just want to ask Bill, Bill,
Yeah,
you
go
were
ahead.
expounding to us, and I'm very familiar with it because I saw it. And it's why we made adjustments to the engineering department. I was there because they were underwater and they needed more help. Bill, you want to expound on what you said the other last week at the budget meeting?
Yeah, sure. Let me just.
I know I just put you in a very difficult position and I apologize for that.
That's all right. First, a couple of things, as Bill alluded to, there are, I think there was 150 or something on the capital budget list. Now, they're not all this year, so there are a lot there. When you look at the capital, and again, I can't really speak for another group, so I don't know exactly what's going on there, but when it says the 3 project managers, I believe one of them is solely for WPCA, correct? That 3?
Mostly.
It remains mostly, however, centralized, so others can work on them.
So on that aspect, I could definitely see, keeping the 3 project managers for the town. From my end, though, a couple of things that pop up, to be honest with you, is the construction managers, they are not all engineers. Okay. Most of them can do project management, but they can't do design engineering. Okay. They do have one that's a professional engineer, and they have Eli, who has an engineering degree. Even as we speak now, engineering currently has 25 projects that involve grants. I have the list here. There's also DOT projects, capital non-recurring, FEMA, and there's other projects that we share with municipalities. Whenever it is a bridge, we share. Sometimes we're the lead agency, sometimes we're not. If we're not on the lead agency, the capital planning group gave that bridge back to the engineering department to review and administer and manage. As you know, we have now the Complete Streets Coordinator in our department, the Vice Chair, LTA. We manage 15 town-owned signals with a new traffic control command center. And I could be wrong, but I believe none of the ones from capital planning have that capability to do that traffic command center.
Correct.
Our surveyors provide the drone coverage. They are working with the engineering department and with capital planning. Engineering is providing knowledge experience with permits, grant assistance, quality review with some WPA projects like the pump stations and the hydraulic analysis for the sewer network in town. We provide some video inspection services, which is something relatively new before the town paves the road. We want to film or videotape the roadway condition and also the pipes. The last thing we want to do is, pave a road and then,
Right.
A month later, we need to replace the drainage pipe. So we've been doing that ahead of time as well. We're always working on easements with the conservation, DPW, the town attorney. Mainly our regulators that do that. We have to compile the stormwater pollution prevention plan, which we've saved the town probably well over a couple $100,000 over the last, say, 5 or 10 years for that. MS4 sample collection permitting. Those are all requirements by the EPA and the DEP. We provide an annual report on that. still over 60 pages. Even it says the grant manager, we've had grant managers in the past. They've been helpful in applying and managing the grants, but the plans, the concepts, the design, preliminary design, the cost estimates, information, civil engineering parameters, and research still comes to us.
Right.
So it's a help, but it still involves us. The town has over 65 large bridges and culverts. There are 3 that the capital group is managing for the town. We are managing 2 or 3 ourselves, where, as I said before, we're either not the lead agency or we had already started that. There's also a local bridge application that's going to be due, where we can apply for that. And as I said, the engineering department has to decide which bridges and culverts, based on reports. The state does give us 15 biennial reports that we have to go through and look at, but there's other 50 of them. They rotate maybe every 10 years, they do a report, or it's up to the engineering department to go out and inspect that culvert. And some of them are rather large and some of them are small, but there are over 50 of them that the town maintains. The latest adaptive traffic signal technology, as I mentioned before, with the command center. We work with MetroCog. We work with all sorts of different agencies. In the interest of time, I had rattled off about 20 different departments and agencies and associations that engineering works with. I did mention zoning, but I did not go into the detail of the code enforcements and the reviews that zoning relies on for any development projects. And that's also the same with conservation. When the development that applies to conservation department, they rely on engineering to make sure that especially the drainage components are adhered to from engineering. We do guide rails, we do the sidewalks, some of the ADA ramps that we're trying to improve on involved. They're not just little projects. It involves maybe moving a utility pole or moving a traffic signal pole. Might even involve right-of-way taking in order to get the ADA compliant in there. We're working on that. And there's always seems to be anywhere from 24 to 50 drainage projects. Sometimes they're fairly simple where, okay, we can enlarge a pipe from 12 to 18 inches, no big deal. But other times if you go from a 24 to say a 48, now you might be bombing somebody else downstream. So you have to go through some sort of watershed analysis and do that, which we try to do a lot in-house. But real large projects that might involve a half a mile of piping or something like that, we may farm them out, but a lot of the ones we do in-house or try to do in-house. I mentioned before, as I said, that the engineers in our department have been doing design and can provide project management. But on the other side, they're doing a good job dealing with utilities, dealing with the public, but I don't think they can do the design. Trying to think of anything else that comes here. I mentioned tie gates, helping out in the departments.
So, clear, Bill, you had Eli doing project management and engineering.
But he mainly because he did such the large projects of Penfield and the
Which is
contaminated
winding down.
soil, right? He was mainly project manager.
So like Ray's position.
Ray's position, we had him on the Four Corners. And there might have been one other project that he was doing, quote, project management, but he was also doing several drainage designs, sidewalks, and, helping out on Q alerts and, all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
engineering work.
So, yeah,
So his position is no longer in your department.
that's correct.
So technically you have lost 2 people, but okay, Eli was doing the project management, so he sits at a different place, still does project management, but you're down someone who was assisting you, who had an engineering degree, who was helping you with, sidewalks and bridge and whatever it is, culvert assistance. So that's actually engineering work that now is not in your department and is being, having to be taken up by less people.
That would be a fair
accurate?
statement, yes.
So, I mean, that's a problem for me. I mean, listen, you're right, Bill, it's your ball, you want something. I ran the town. I know what engineering does. And they lost an engineer. And I don't think we should be adding to the budget because I already think there's too much change that's really hard to follow along as it is. But this, Bill, let me ask you, and you're taking up safe streets and this whole, you have a coordinator and now you have this LTA, so you have even more responsibility on you, in my opinion, than you had before. And you're down an actual, someone who does the actual design and all of that. Are you interacting with these new people in this other department? Like, can you say, hey, our cup runneth over here. We can't do this bridge design. I can't go and survey this culvert. Can you go up and say, can you take this? I mean, do you guys work collaboratively or?
In some cases, usually they come to us. We haven't really gone out to them. I've been working with Wendy and Troy on a couple of the bridges, which they're still in design. And so they have contacted me. And I know Eli and Scott have worked on drone footage and some projects like that. But as far as going to them, can you design this and all that? No, I haven't done it, but as I said, I'm not sure if they have the capability, because as Bill had mentioned too, they're getting full too. 150 something projects. And for the benefit of the town, I would probably say, and then again, it's a budget thing, that we should add an engineer. I'm not advocating to take one away of the project managers, because I honestly think they're needed as well. But now it's a question of, who's needed more, or is there a way 50-50, or that is a decision that I'd have to meet with the administration for.
I just think it's worth talking about. And listen, again, it's not up to me. We've added staff to this new project management department, and it's, based on everything you said last week and in today, you have a lot more work. You're down an engineer, and that's the bottom line. You're down an engineer, and you and Mega and Anthony are handling it. One less person. So there's more work on your plate. And yeah, there's a lot more projects, but you were handling project management too. So everybody's backed up. I just think that there should have been a slow transition. I don't think we should have taken an engineer out of the engineering department, but that's just me. And again, it's not my decision to make, and I'm not going to add any more money to the budget because I thought that there was too many changes that were difficult to follow along as it was. I just thought it was important for the board to hear again, because I know what you do. And I think it's important for the public to know because, people are mad because their culvert isn't right, or their storm drain wasn't cleaned out, or you didn't survey their sidewalk, or
Oh, yeah.
thousands of other things. And let's face it, the planning and zoning, they're hopping over there. They're having like a meeting every night. And they have so many projects, and then I'm sure Jim comes down and dumps a bunch of stuff on you and says, I need you to analyze the flow of water going to this thing and the sewer and so then you have to do it. So listen, you're one of the last guys that leaves the building usually, I remember. Night, so put it hot in your office. That's all. I just wanted to bring it up again to point for Selectmen, up to you and not me.
Yeah, I'm hopefully very clear on this point. That both these groups, like prior to the creation of this group, it was all, most of them would have been under Bill. We took one person from Parks and Rec that did projects for Parks and Rec and moved over to project management. So that person can now do projects for Parks and Rec, but when they're not doing Parks and Rec projects, they're doing projects for other areas of town, like police and fire, where they're renovating. They're renovating their headquarters and the firehouses. This now falls under a project management group. Bill did mention that Ray did a significant amount of, spent a significant amount of time on project management. So, but also spent time on things that were not project management. And it is true, if Bill does not have access to that person in project management for the non-project management work of a Ray, then he's down. However, there are still projects being managed out of engineering that Bill can hand over to the project management group to free up more time within engineering. But you will get no argument from me if you want to. I mean, I would like to add a head count, and really that was part of the sacrifices that I made. There's these massive increases this year, so I don't see. For me, I don't see an argument that I would agree with to move a person from one place to another because of the reasons that you've cited are not compelling. They're compelling in terms of the impact on Bill, but they're also compelling in the opposite direction on the impact of managing massive projects. And you can make the argument either way. And I do think you could add headcount. But if you're not willing to do that, I mean, I'm not sure I'm ready to fight that fight, given the budget pressures that we're under right now. I would like to do it if I mean, I'm not ready to make that proposal because I do want to be a little cautious about that, but I do feel for Bill, and to the extent the project management team can take more project Bill, as Bill mentioned, he is still managing projects. His value clearly adds value in projects, but the serious value add of a guy like Bill Hurley, who's the PE, is design. And to the extent that we can free Bill up for more design by taking projects and moving it to the project management group, we should do that. But as Bill pointed out, the project management group is getting, if not already, pretty close to capacity. And we may ultimately end up doing what you would typically do when your capacity is going externally for project management, which is expensive, and that's what we're trying to do with Pro. So there's really no right or wrong answer in this, and I do agree with you that Bill could always use another headcount, as could Eli. So it's one of these crazy things where there's no right.
Well, I mean, in the past, we used to, have a contingency or a set amount in a project for, whoever's doing the project to have a project management included, which probably might have been more cost effective in some instances, but all I know is that our engineering department is down, an actual engineer working on design. And I just want the public to be aware that that's not my decision to make. It's how it was organized. I feel like more of the conversation should have been had. But I just wanted to bring it up, and I just thought that, Phil made a lot, that comment at the last budget meeting, and I thought it was worthy of having a discussion again today. Just wanted to have it for the record.
Okay, understood. Would you like to?
I think I appreciate Bill sharing some of the challenges, in case you weren't aware, and that there is flexibility with the staff and trusting you to adjust as needed. I'm not looking to add headcount right now, given the challenges that the Board of Ed is still facing and other departments that ask for headcount this year and did not receive them. But appreciate the discussion.
Yeah, it's a good discussion. There's nothing fundamentally wrong with any points that have been made.
Yep. Okay.
If I may just
Would you like
add
to-
that the staff at engineering works hard. We now have a couple of people have been with the town almost 18 or 20 years, survey group. And the newer engineers have been here at least 4 years, so they're familiar with the town. And I said, I realize it's a budget. I was hoping that to get the position reinstated. 'Cause as I said, I know there's a lot of things that are going down the pike and, you know, we haven't had a humdinger of a storm now in a couple of years, but, you know, drainage has me worried. And, you know, some of the guidance, you know, the new ADA compliance, they call it PROAG. And, you know, we always have to worry about the bridges, the tie gates, scour, and obviously a lot of public complaint. I just
What
wanted
are
to.
those?
No, I mean, just to the first selectman, I'm hearing this feedback. This is the first, you know, this budget is not done yet. Just asked for you to take a look at it, and if you think any adjustments need to be made prior to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would not,
I
I
just,
would not
yeah,
fight
yeah,
an
I
increase.
mean, and I really just right now, I'm not really prepared to,
Okay.
go on that. So if it came to that, I'd be abstaining.
Okay. Bill, thank you. You are, well, first of all, I'd like to put a plug in for local traffic authority. So Bill and Mega Jane are now part of the local traffic authority. Mega Jane is actually the Complete Streets coordinator. I urge everyone to look at the website that she has set up, or the tab on the town website. She now has projects and schedules up, and that's just the start. She's already done a marvelous job starting the planning of projects that will make our streets safer. And and Bill is on that and providing advice on that effort as well.
You know, just note that that's more work than they didn't have before. I
Yes.
mean, maybe the project management team could take that on because they're down people and they're taking on even more work, which doesn't really seem fair.
Well, Mega Jane really wanted to do that work, and she was the logical person to do it. But yeah, go ahead.
I mean, just for, in the essence of, I think we're kind of getting off track a little bit.
Yeah.
In terms of the budget, this sounds more of an operations, which is a totally valid conversation
Okay.
to have, but maybe.
But I
Had a
wanted to
different
express my
meaning.
appreciation
Yes,
and put a
I-
plug in for people to
Okay.
go to the website. There's a way, there's sort of new ways to log. Anyway, this is just really a plug. It's not
Okay.
part of the budget process.
All
right, sorry.
Talking about operations a little bit more,
Yeah,
which I appreciate, but if we're not going to be making budget adjustments,
thank you for
Sorry.
pulling me back from the plug. Anyway, what's next? Any other motion?
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you,
Nice to
Bill.
see you.
and thank you to your department.
So we're still on the motion, the main motion, we're back to the main motion.
Any,
To consider an act upon the proposed revenues and appropriations in the amount of 388,690,772, which I believe is changed now due to the amendments.
do you have any other amendments you'd like to make?
No.
Okay. We have a number, David?
So the number we are at now is $381,964. And
$381.
$181,964,286.
$386 and how many cents, or
We don't, we
we don't leave,
we
put the
round
cent,
off of that, so it's.
so we round in. So let me repeat that. That is 381,964.
Affirmative.
Okay, so if there are no other proposed amendments, can we,
I'd like to
yeah,
offer some comments if that's okay.
go ahead.
So obviously, I've been involved in town government a long time. And I have to say that I just felt like there was so many more questions coming out of these budget meetings than answers, the restructuring of engineering, the creations of the operations department, moving people around, taking parking authority over, which I still don't understand how that's gonna work. $875,000 built into the budget on speed cameras that may take a year to even. There's a lot of things that I didn't feel comfortable with. And I just felt like, the budget was rushed. And it wasn't kind of ready for prime time. As far as the education budget, yes, I am, yes, to your point, to the first selectman's point. Yes, it was a large increase, but we knew it was coming. And, to my comments early, we knew this was coming. And frankly, there should have been adjustments on the town side and not this whole reorganization and, increasing salaries and adding staff. And I just think that it wasn't the appropriate year to do those things because we needed to cover what we all agreed in a contractual obligation. There was, the approach to the Board of Education. I don't want to be adversarial, but during the meeting last week when it's, the comment is that there's no way in hell anyone's ever going to get motivated to make budget cuts unless they're under pressure. That doesn't feel right to me. It feels reckless and I think a lot of Fairfield residents, voiced alarm over it. Feels like this is kind of a page out of Elon Musk's chainsaw style playbook that we're seeing on the federal level. Just go ahead and figure out $1.9 million. It's not that easy. I've been at tables trying to figure out $1.9 million. And it's not easy. Things really have to change when you want to move the needle that much. Listen, I supported the amendment, Christine. I appreciate it. I think it should have been more. Obviously, it's irresponsible, in my opinion, for me to vote overall to increase anything without the necessary offsets. Because as we have many, and I know it real well, I grew up in this town and not in the wealthy areas. And I get it. You need to keep the budget down. And this percentage as it is now is higher than we've had in quite a long time. So, I'm gonna urge the Board of Finance to step up here where the Board of Selectmen cannot. It's about good governance, fiscal responsibility, and they are the ones that have a longer period of time. They have the benefit of seeing us discuss this budget and having it changed and updated more than what we got. And they are the ones, I think, that are really going to be in the driver's seat here to ensure that taxpayers get the transparency they deserve. And they're the only board in town that can put money back. The RTM for public edification cannot put money back. They can only cut. So Board of Finance is really the main player. And I can't vote for a budget that's built on a lot of assumptions and I'd love to give the Board of Ed back their 3 million. And I think that the Board of Finance should look to do that. And I should think they scour the town side and make changes. So it's a bare bones budget on the town side with no real changes. So we can fulfill our obligation to our teachers and our kids. And then next year come back with, okay, we want to reorg this, or we want to change that on the town side. And you say to education, you need to back off. We need the money this go around. So I'm going to have to vote no on this budget. And I just wanted to make those comments.
Okay. Any comments you would like to make, Christine? And let me go first.
I just want, on the ed piece, I think that there was planning for the salary increases. I mean, the Board of Education, unexpected $2.78 million shortfall that nobody saw coming. So I don't think it was a lack of planning. I think it was just an unfortunate with the transportation that really that really blew things out of the water. And it wasn't that we didn't know that these salary increases were coming for collective bargaining, that it was the transportation piece that really was unexpected, driven by market forces, and where we are right now for going out to bid. So I just want to push back on that a little bit. It's not that the town is not committed to paying our educators. And I think that this is the starting piece. I would have, as I said, I would have been comfortable with an increase if there wasn't an offset. When I didn't know about, I'm happy that there was an offset to the $2 million increase. But really appreciate just the sacrifices made by all town departments. And the public for being engaged, and for all of, I didn't reply to all the emails, but I very much appreciate them and did read them, and really appreciate the civic engagement. It's been a tough couple weeks.
Yeah.
And to your point, Christine, I tried my hardest to reply to everybody this weekend. It's been a lot of time replying. And I didn't get to reply from midnight to this morning. So anybody who I missed, I apologize.
We have emails still coming in right now. I'm not sure. I mean, this is part of the thing is people just don't have time to keep up with. This has always been the case. People are working and they don't even know that we're voting right now. They're still sending the emails. It's just really hard for the public to stay on top of everything. And to that point, there is one thing I want to address, because some of the emails I got, first of all, most of the emails, I would say 99% were extremely respectful. And just said, look, I moved here because of the education system. I moved here 3 or 5 years ago. We bought our house here because of the education system. We don't want to see cuts that are going to hurt that. Some people added that, basically, how dare you, because you're jacking up the administrative expense in your office, Mr. First Selectman. I do want to address that really quickly. Those were mainly geographical changes. And so I know it looked a certain way. I wanted to address that today. The Chief Administrative Officer budget. Our Chief Administrative Officer, first of all, we don't have one anymore. It's a Chief Operating Officer, but our Chief Operating Officer is Mr. Becker. That higher salary he has been earning for many months now, because he's been, unfortunately, it took us a long time to find Tom Harris, who is sitting over there, and he just joined us a couple months ago. It's his first budget, but we were looking for someone highly qualified. David Becker was working 2 jobs at the same time. It was a lot to put on him, but I didn't want to hire an interim CFO when I had somebody who was doing how I felt better than anyone I had ever dealt with on the RTM who was in the CFO role. And so I didn't think we were overworking him, but he was willing to do it. His salary of $170,000 was in the finance department as we awaited hiring a CFO. His salary has not changed. The 131, 118 in the prior year was the salary carried over from the prior administration for a Chief Administrative Officer. We went out and did a market survey. There was no intention of reducing Mr. Becker's salary, because the market is clear that that 131 is well below market, and we would not have been able to hire someone with the adequate skill set. We didn't actually, if you look instead of budget to budget, which is a bit misleading, budget to actual for the current year will also be misleading, because we had one person doing 2 jobs for much of the year. But in terms of that specific salary, that was the salary that he's been getting. I think most people on the boards knew that. Maybe that's why we didn't hear much about that, because they knew that that salary was 170. And so it's not a person who's currently making 130, now making 170. Somebody who was making 170, working 2 jobs and actually saving the town money for most of the year. Deputy Chief of Staff, well, a lot of that was already in contingency for, we have a policy in Town Hall where non-union employees will track, many of them will track union contracts. And once those union contracts are settled, often they get a COLA increase. And for some of these positions, there's been no COLA increase for quite some time. We are in the process of implementing that. A lot of those are held in contingency. In this case, our Deputy Chief of Staff is owed COLA increase, and I did give her a relatively modest increase. And we have interns, which have never been sort of broken out as interns separately. That's $16,000, which have in the past, in the current year, are in part-time employees in different places all over the budget. We pulled them together under my office as interns. You cannot legally or morally anymore. It is not anymore normal to not pay interns unless what they do is tied to a specific credited course. And so we have interns doing jobs from Sacred Heart, from Fairfield View, sometimes high school students. And that's been the normal course for many years. But I think the idea of not paying them is actually not really possible anymore. And so we consolidated that, and we're trying to formalize what that program looks like. If you move this all around and you account for everything I just said, the increase in my office is 6.8%, and it totals $48,948. So I want to put that sort of to bed, and I wouldn't have expected anyone to know that, and was planning on discussing it today. I wasn't actually necessarily planning on discussing it until I got many emails that said how, basically, how dare you cut the Board of Ed budget and increase your staff. The increase in my staff is very modest, in our staff cost is very modest. We did move our communications director from part-time to full-time. However, she's gotten rave reviews from most of the public that I deal with. What she's produced is one of the things that I get a lot of positive comments on, which is, communicating with the town, keeping people informed of new things going on, and major things that we need your participation on, including this meeting today. Encouraging people to come out, planning to venue to a larger venue. A lot of that comes from our communications director. She moved part-time to full-time. However, part-time, she was really pushing up against the maximum limits of part-time. So the lane shift between part and full-time, you don't see a big increase. You see a modest increase, and the increase there, the larger increase comes through. She will be eligible for benefits. I don't know what she will take in terms of benefits, but that's really a benefit increase that doesn't show up in my budget, and is a rounding error in the overall budget. So that is something I wanted to highlight, because there might be a feeling out there that the first selectman was out of control, being selfish while I was cutting the Board of Ed budget, and that's factually not the case. And hopefully people will hear this. I guess I can put this out on. I can post the numbers on the website, and so that people can see it. Finally, again, I hate cutting education budget, and but in my position now, I have to look at the whole town. I think where we are right now is a compromise. I think it is important. It is very difficult to get people in government to do things that they're not used to doing. I think working on a shared services model, having had a couple of very positive conversations with the chair of the Board of Ed and willingness to look at this. I think we all know that if we were to go away and never mention this again, it would never happen, but we are going to keep mentioning it. We're going to work together and we are going to make sure that we turn over every stone to try to save money for the town. And I fully admit, if that money's not there, we're gonna spend a lot of time and effort in trying to make sure that we do the right job, even if we have to hire third parties from, California to come in and assess it, which may cost some money, but ultimately the long-term savings of a shared services model, whatever departments we can do for that. The long-term value is, I believe, most likely there and worth investing time and effort in. I have nothing else to say and I'm ready to vote. Any other questions or comments from the board? So we are going to vote on an expense budget of $381,964,286. Are we ready to vote? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? And so 2 in favor, 1 opposed, the motion passes. I would just want to thank, most people have left, but for those who came out and to the Board of Ed and all the other department heads who were here, thank you very much. To the Board of Education itself, thank you for all your advocacy. And we will see you probably at the Board of Finance meeting next, or maybe at the Board of Selectmen meeting when we vote on your capital projects being bonded. And that's the next step in making this all happen. So thank you.
Can I ask for a little housekeeping item?
Yeah, sure.
Lisa, you could help with it. We transferred to a new website, whole new website, right when I was leaving. And for some reason, during this whole thing, we got a lot of emails from residents and they were saying it's not easy to email the Board of Finance or the RTM. Before it used to be boardselectmen@fairfieldcp.org and get everybody, which still is. Now, for people, they have to go on a site, they have to fill out a form. And it's so
Yeah,
unhelpful
I
for
can
them.
actually.
So if we
respond to
could just go back to that Board of Finance at cp.org and RTM, just like the Board of Selectmen has, so that it just makes it easier for,
I
our
don't think we can
residents-
go back.
it's just
are
an email address, and what happens
Yeah.
is IT created it and they can do it
Yeah.
again.
So
Board of Finance at fairfieldct.org, they should be able to just be able to
Totally.
email, and that goes to all the Board of Finance members.
totally familiar with it. RTM, we had the same thing. This
We
was a
fixed that, though,
cyber.
so everybody could get it.
Yeah, but we are having cybersecurity issues. I think that's why a lot of towns are moving towards the form methodology. We're getting incredible amounts of
Well, we have
spam.
it, and I don't think it's public friendly, and it's not
Actually,
really fair.
Go ahead, David. David is.
the only comment I make on this board, it was actually over the past, only a couple of days ago. You had actually inquired for this board, because it's one of the last few that are still on a, something at org. They've moved most, if not all, of the boards at this stage to the form and are trying to finish doing that. Not all members receive messages when you do that because of cyber issues. So
But they
there's actually
do.
been a lot of
they do,
discussion.
David.
Maybe.
Yeah, this is we
Maybe
should
we
talk
should have
offline
this-
because we should have this meeting with David Kelly
Yeah.
because David's been intimately
Yeah.
involved in the issues and the cybersecurity.
I just don't want to make it harder for people to contact us, and I think it's really in transparency. People
I
should
get
be
it.
able
We were on board with you until we discovered that people were getting malware and spam through that system. Unfortunately, it allows.
I haven't done.
Yeah, the boards
Yeah.
were. So you.
No, not me.
No, but.
Board of Selectmen.
Board of Finance, RTM, it was a real problem. No one really wanted to switch.
Just stronger something on it.
Yeah,
Well,
we
maybe just
need
have
to be-
Dave come and
yeah.
what he could. 'Cause it's-
I think
Maybe
you
you
need.
just
Seems like it would be
We
an
can
easy
actually, you
housekeeping,
should
but it's
meet
really
with
not.
Dave Kelly. because we had multiple meetings
Well,
with
these
them.
people are just like saying,
I
wow,
get it,
why do I
I
have
get
to
it, but
sit
there's
and fill
other
out a form
considerations.
that's so.
Can we talk about this
Yeah, I'm
afterwards?
fine. Yeah, I
Okay,
get a motion.
motion to adjourn?
Yeah.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, yeah, you should definitely have a meeting with Dave Kelly.